What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Master and Apprentice video and podcast. Athens back. Say hello.
Hello.
I was talking about the people, but
I'm
you
sorry.
can also say hello. So back with another book review. We technically already recorded this, but we had some errors. But the Thrawn Novel. This is part of the first Thrawn trilogy. There's two Thrawn trilogies. There's technically a third, and then also a duology. But the first original Thrawn trilogy is Legends, right? And then the duology is also Legends. But then later, in like 2016-ish, they released a new canon Thrawn trilogy, and actually pretty recently, in the last like 5 years, they released a second, the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy. So with that, we're going over the first one, just titled Thrawn, and gonna kind of plug it into our book tier list over all the other Star Wars books. And without further ado, we'll get right into it. So the Thrawn book, I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. When we recorded the first recording, we hadn't read the other Thrawn books, but I've read the other Thrawn books, so I kind of have more to base off of now, I guess. And I gotta say, I think this is probably the best one. But I think this one, if you plugged it into the original Thrawn trilogy with the Heir to the Empire series, it works with that. Like, it works with that character of Thrawn. And I just really enjoyed it. It was a good read, very interesting. The way they introduced Thrawn, the way they introduced Vanto, which is kind of the replacement for Pelion in a way. Pelion is still canon, but he doesn't play the same role. Vanto kind of replaces Pelion in the canon universe. And just the way he rose in the ranks of the Empire from, a cadet to a Grand Admiral was very cool to see, very interesting and intricate. And the process of the whole novel, the first one, I thought was very fun. And the main antagonist throughout it wasn't that interesting. It felt almost as a subplot, to be honest. It just felt like more of a book that was supposed to be background for Thrawn and who he is as we see him later on. It didn't feel like the story of it with Night Swan felt all that meaningful. It was cool and interesting, but it didn't feel meaningful. But Thrawn rising in the ranks, making enemies, making friends, getting to know the Emperor getting to know him, us getting more information on the Chiss ascendancy, all of that stuff felt very meaningful, and I really enjoyed it.
I will agree with Sammy where he said that Night Swan did seem like a subplot. I mean, the whole book was obviously based around Thrawn, and then at the very end, you see they find Night Swan, and it's not this crazy group or anything. It's just the one person he's taken down, and that's that. I mean, and through the book, it's crazy to see. I mean, Thrawn is this amazing character that we see in Rebels and now Ahsoka, and it's just cool to see him play chess with a war table, and he'll just outmaneuver you when you think you finally got a little edge. He just completely obliterates you and blindsides you, and it's an amazing thing to see, and that's what is shown in this book, that he is 10 steps ahead of the Imperials. When he's first being captured by the Empire, it seems like there's just this group of people that are attacking them, and it turns out to just be Thrawn. He sneaks aboard all by himself, does this, and he's already got the next 10 steps marked out of the way for him. He had himself captured in a very specific way. Like, it's really fun to see that in a perspective from Thrawn, because oftentimes, even in Rebels, where you do see a lot of his perspective, you don't see his thinking, and you see his thinking a lot of these in this book.
Yeah, I gotta say, I really enjoyed this. This was my favorite out of the trilogy, the first Thrawn trilogy, and I think it even lives up to the original Thrawn trilogy with the Heir to the Empire series. It's very good. And it's, it makes sense because Timothy Zahn wrote all of these books, all of these series by Thrawn. He kind of created the character of Thrawn. Then Dave Filoni brought him into the universe of, in canon Star Wars. But like all the novelizations that we've seen Thrawn in was done by Timothy Zahn. So it makes sense that this was on point what we've seen in Legends, because he's the one who created the character. And I think he did a good job of translating him into a different perspective, different era, technically speaking. So with all of that, Thrawn in the upcoming Ahsoka series, season 2, the Mandalorian series, it's kind of been like the rumor is like he's like the Thanos of these upcoming series, right? This Mandoverse, if you will say. Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, eventually Skeleton Crew. All of these are supposed to come together and this culmination of another movie. And Thrawn is supposed to be like this big bad, right? Like the heir of the Empire kind of big bad. And this novel is going to be canon for when we see this. And so it's just interesting and fun to kind of put this in perspective. And I hope they use some of this later on down the road. You know, things like Vanto. I hope we see him again, maybe on screen, the Chiss Ascendancy. By the end of this trilogy, you kind of get this impression that the Chiss Ascendancy and the Grisk are really underappreciated in the Star Wars community because they're very cool in these novels. They're very interesting and very cool and mysterious. And then the Thrawn Ascendancy books kind of play into that way more, but we haven't gotten to that yet. So with all that, we're going to plug this into our Star Wars book tier list here. As you guys can see, we got S, A, B, C, D tier. Nothing in the D, only one book in C, the Star Wars, A New Dawn, and a couple books here and there. But overall, we've been pretty fond of a lot of these books. I've got to say this, looking back at it, is a top 1 or 2 book for me. It's an S tier easy. This is by far just one of the more interesting, even with like the underwhelming Night Swan subplot, which was, I think, supposed to be more important. It just didn't feel important. But the rest of the book was super interesting, mysterious, and intriguing. And so I got to put this pretty high on the list. I don't know if I put this above Dark Disciple, but it's 1 or 2 for me. And I'll let Athen kind of decide where he wants to put it, but that's where I put it.
I was going to put it up on number 1, but I think that I wanted to put it at number 1 partially because of how important it is right now in the books, in the shows we're getting, right? A New Dawn would be the coolest book ever if you're watching Rebels right now. Right now, all the new Star Wars stuff is coming out with Thrawn. This puts it on a tier above S for me because I'm learning all of his backstory, and this is just the coolest stuff ever. But I think a year after the Mandoverse movie comes out, we watched it, sat on it. I'm not going to say it's a bad book because it's an amazing book, but I'm going to put it right under Dark Disciple.
Yep. And, you know, with new things coming out and kind of decanonizing things, like we see Asajj in the new Bad Batch season, there's things can be moved around, things can be moved down, things can be moved up. You know, maybe Thrawn is like the most legendary character in the newest Ahsoka and Mandalorian projects going forward, and that makes us want to move it up. And, you know, maybe the decanonization of Asajj's death in Dark Disciple makes it not as impactful. We move it down. So things can be moved, but this is how I'm feeling about it right now, I'd say. Yep. So there you guys go. A great book. I'd probably give it, if I had to give it like a out of 10, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I think that's. I don't think it's perfect because the subplot of Night Swan just didn't feel too important, but everything else on this book is pretty much perfect.
I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. I mean, not to say exactly what Sammy just said, but I loved every aspect of it. I mean, the Night Swan was a little issue here, but it was like, that's not even a big issue. It's still just an amazing book.
Yep. So let us know what you guys think down in the comments. You guys enjoyed this book? Didn't enjoy it? What do you guys think of our review of it? Fair, not fair? And yeah, if you guys are listening on podcast, we appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that download and follow. It helps out the pod a lot. If you guys are watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. Check out some of our other book reviews. You can check our playlist tag or some of the other book reviews on the screen now. And with that, we'll see you guys later.
Peace.